It started with a whisper, not a scream, not a fight, just a whisper, behind my back, between the people I trusted the most. My name's Nolan, I'm 37 now. But when everything began unraveling, I was 35, married, a dad, and completely oblivious to the storm building around me. I lived in a 2-story house I built with my own hands. Not entirely, but I was the guy who laid down the floors, painted the nursery, and fixed every leaky pipe without calling a plumber. My daughter, Ellie, had just turned 6, and she was the brightest thing in my life. A dimpled, messy-haired firecracker who thought pancakes were the solution to every problem. My wife, Rachel, was complicated. That's the best way I can put it now, looking back. At the time, I thought she was just stressed. She worked in marketing, constantly balancing deadlines and clients that treated her like dirt. I tried to help, picked up more chores, took Ellie out on Saturdays so Rachel could rest. I even set up her office with noise-canceling panels and a new desk, just to give her peace and quiet. But no matter how much I did, something felt off. Like I was always walking into a room just after someone had left, that stale, hollow kind of feeling you can't quite explain. Rachel had become distant, and not just tired or distracted, but cold. Her eyes used to light up when Ellie ran into the room. Now they barely flickered. Her hugs became rare. Her I love yous became routine. Polite. Like I was a guest in my own home. Still, I never imagined divorce. I thought we'd just hit a rough patch. I mean, everyone does, right? That's what marriage is, sticking it out when things aren't perfect. What I didn't know was that Rachel had already decided to end it. She just hadn't told me yet. It started with little things. Her phone always flipped face down when I walked into the room. Late-night client calls that seemed oddly flirtatious. She started dressing up for grocery runs. Not just a little lipstick. I mean full-on curled hair and perfume at 8 p.m. when we ran out of eggs. I noticed. Of course I noticed. But every time I brought it up, she spun it back on me. Said I was being insecure, controlling, paranoid. So I dropped it. I had no proof, and I didn't want to be that guy, the jealous husband making accusations. Besides, we had Ellie. I didn't want to drag her through some messy fallout. Then came the night my sister, Brielle, called me. And that's when things really started to shift. Now, Brielle and I have never been super close. Not since our 20s, anyway. She's 2 years older than me. And growing up, she had this habit of acting like my third parent instead of a sibling. After our mom passed, she took on the mom role like it was a job title. But when she moved out of state, we drifted. I always thought it was mutual. So when she called me, completely out of the blue, and said, "Hey, just wanted to check in," I was immediately suspicious. And I hate that I felt that way. But my gut was right. The conversation was awkward at first. Surface-level small talk. Then she asked how Rachel was doing. I gave my usual non-answer. Busy, work stuff. She hesitated, and then said, "Has she mentioned anything?" About seeing someone. That's when the air left the room. I asked her straight up, "What do you mean?" And Brielle got cagey. Said she probably shouldn't have brought it up. That it wasn't her business. But it was obvious she knew something. And now that the door was cracked open, my brain kicked into overdrive. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept thinking about the phone calls. The perfume. The way Rachel had started going out more, smiling more, but never when she was around me. I didn't want to believe it. But deep down, I think I already did. Still, I didn't confront her. Not yet. Because I didn't want to make it real. Instead, I started paying more attention. Watching. Listening. It felt disgusting, spying on the woman I married. But I was desperate for the truth. And I got it, 2 weeks later. She left her work laptop open on the dining table. I wasn't trying to snoop. I was grabbing a charger, but the screen was lit up, and there it was. A message thread, right in her Slack window. She wasn't even trying to hide it. His name was Mason, one of her co-workers. 29, single, and from the looks of the messages, very much not just a friend. There was nothing explicit in the conversation. No photos. No I love yous. But the way she spoke to him, the flirtatious emojis, the inside jokes, the little complaints about Nolan not understanding her, it was enough. My hands were shaking. I wanted to confront her right there, yell, scream, throw the laptop out the window. But Ellie was home, and I couldn't do that in front of her. So I waited. Waited until the next night, after Ellie went to bed. I walked into our bedroom, heart pounding, and said, "We need to talk." Rachel didn't even look surprised. She just sighed, like she'd been expecting it, like she was bored of hiding. I told her I saw the messages, that I knew about Mason. She didn't deny it, just looked at me with this detached, almost clinical expression and said, "We're not working, Nolan. We haven't for a long time." I asked her if she was in love with him. She said, "Does it matter?" And that, more than the cheating, that cold, indifferent response shattered me, because it meant she had checked out long ago, and I had been the only one trying to hold the marriage together. The next day, she moved out. At first, I thought we could make the divorce civil. We agreed to split custody, to keep things as normal as possible for Ellie. I told her I didn't want to make this ugly. But then, the custody documents arrived, and I realized Rachel had other plans. She wasn't just asking for primary custody. She was claiming I was emotionally unstable, that I had a history of controlling behavior, that Ellie wasn't safe with me. And the cherry on top? Attached to her filing was a list of potential witnesses, people she claimed would back up her version of events. The first name on the list? Brielle. That's when I knew something deeper was going on. My own sister, the one who called me just weeks before, acting like she was concerned. She had known about the affair, and now she was siding with Rachel. I felt physically sick. I tried calling her. She didn't answer. I texted. No reply. I even drove to her place the next weekend, and she wouldn't open the door. It was like I'd become a ghost in my own family. Then the rumors started. My dad called me out of the blue, asking if I was okay. But the way he asked was loaded, like he'd already heard something. My cousin texted me saying, "Heard things got crazy with Rachel. Hope you're doing better, man." Even friends I hadn't spoken to in months were suddenly treating me like I was radioactive. And Rachel? She was thriving, posting smiling selfies with Ellie. New apartment, new hair, new life. No mention of me, of course. Just captions like "fresh starts" and "doing what's best for my daughter to Hearts." I was drowning in legal bills, forced into supervised visitation while the court evaluated the claims. I'd never laid a hand on Rachel, never raised my voice at her. But her lawyers were good, slick, and she had Brielle testifying that I'd always had anger issues, that I was unpredictable under stress. She even referenced stuff from when I was 16, a fistfight I got into in high school that had nothing to do with any of this. They painted me as a threat, a liability, and the court bought it. I lost custody. I got buried in alimony. My reputation, my friendships, even my job took a hit. HR called me in, citing concerns raised by a third party. I didn't get fired, but my promotion vanished overnight. Ellie went from seeing me 4 times a week to once, under supervision. And every time she asked, "Why can't I come home, Daddy?" I had no answer. Rachel had taken everything. My home, my daughter, my sister, my name, and I still didn't know why. Was it just about getting rid of me? Starting fresh with Mason? Or was there something deeper? Some twisted need to destroy me completely? I didn't find out, not until 2 years later. It was a Tuesday, just a normal day. I was working a double shift at the warehouse, trying to keep my head down. Still paying alimony, still attending court-ordered therapy like I was some kind of ticking time bomb. Then, around 4 p.m., a guy walked in. Mid-30s, nervous eyes. Said he was looking for Nolan. I stepped forward, wiping sweat off my face, and said, "That's me." He looked me dead in the eye and said, "I found the scripts." She rehearsed the whole thing. My stomach dropped. He introduced himself. His name was Mason, and what he handed me changed everything. But I'll get to that. Right now, you need to understand just how deep this betrayal ran, and what pushed me from devastated to dangerous. Everything in me wanted to scream. I stood there in the break room of the warehouse, gripping a manila folder that Mason had handed me with trembling hands. I hadn't even opened it yet. Didn't have to. The look in his eyes said it all. Guilt, regret, maybe fear, but not for himself, for me. "I didn't know how else to find you," he said quietly. She said she threw everything away, but I found this when I was cleaning out her closet. Behind the drywall, taped to the studs. He gestured to the folder. She wrote scripts. Practiced them. Like lines for a play. Things to say in court. Things to say to Ellie. Even things to say to your sister. My mouth was dry. "What are you talking about?" She rehearsed the whole thing, man. The breakdowns. The way she cried in front of the judge. It was all in here. She even timed her pauses. I opened the folder with shaking hands. Inside were neatly stapled documents, some typed, some handwritten. Pages with dialogue blocks like, Nolan yelled at me for forgetting to put gas in the car. Used trembling voice. Pause before tears. If the judge asks about discipline, bring up controlling behavior. Make it sound like fear, not anger. Brielle. Remind her of the time Nolan broke his phone in college. Say it scared you. Use the phrase, volatile under pressure. It wasn't just notes. It was a blueprint. A psychological hit job, crafted with surgical precision. Dozens of pages, each outlining how to build a narrative, how to collapse trust, how to weaponize memories and exaggerate moments until the truth was unrecognizable. And somehow, she'd convinced everyone. Even Mason, the man she left me for. I swear, he said again, voice thick with remorse. I didn't know she was lying. I believed her when she said you were unstable. She made it sound like you'd hit her, like you were dangerous. I looked up at him. Then why leave her now? He hesitated. She started doing it to me. He sat down across from me, rubbed his temples. At first, it was little things. Emotional manipulation, guilt tripping. But then she started writing stuff about me. Scripts again. She was practicing how to cry in front of her mom and say I pushed her, that I controlled her finances, that I cheated. I found it all in her notes. She was going to ruin me the same way. I could barely hear him. My heart was thudding so loudly it felt like it might burst. This wasn't just revenge anymore. This was pathology. Rachel hadn't just tried to destroy me because she was angry or hurt. She planned it, rehearsed it, used my sister, my own blood, as a character in her production. And she nearly pulled it off. I'm sorry, man, Mason said, getting up. I'll testify. Whatever you need. I had to tell you. I had to do something. After he left, I sat there for nearly 30 minutes, staring at that folder. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stopped feeling. Something inside me cracked. Quietly, like a hairline fracture in a frozen lake. And in that silence, I started remembering things. Moments that hadn't made sense before. Like how Rachel once encouraged Brielle to come stay with us for a week when Ellie was a toddler. She said she wanted family around. But during that week, she made a point of bringing up every disagreement we'd ever had in front of Brielle. She'd say things like, remember how mad Nolan got when you took the last cupcake when we were kids? With this faux laugh that always landed flat. Back then, I chalked it up to awkward humor. Now I saw it for what it was, groundwork. She'd been painting me as the problem for years, laying bricks slowly until she had a whole wall of false narratives. And Brielle, who always needed to feel morally superior, probably lapped it up. She wanted to believe Rachel. It validated her need to parent me. I remembered another moment, a family barbecue 2 summers before the divorce. Ellie had spilled juice on my lap, and I'd yelped in surprise. That was it. Just a yelp. But Rachel had rushed over, not to help, but to loudly say, Nolan, calm down. She's just a kid. It was out of proportion. Everyone looked at me like I'd been about to explode. I hadn't even raised my voice. Again, groundwork. And then there was Brielle's testimony. I wasn't allowed to be in the courtroom for it, but my lawyer gave me the gist. She said I had emotional control issues, that I was prone to silence and then outbursts. She even brought up how I once got angry when she ruined my birthday cake as a kid. I'd cried. Apparently, to her, that was a sign of long-term instability. At the time, I'd been stunned, humiliated. Now, I was furious, because all of it, had been planted, scripted, rehearsed, and now I had proof. But here's the worst part. It didn't change anything. Not immediately. The court wouldn't care that I had scripts, unless I could prove they were real, that they hadn't been planted by me as revenge. My lawyer said we needed corroboration, testimony, forensic analysis. Otherwise, it was just paper. So I did the only thing I could. I went to Brielle. It was a rainy Saturday when I knocked on her door. She didn't answer the first time, or the second, but on the third knock, I heard her voice. Nolan, what do you want? I just want to talk. I don't think that's a good idea. I'm not here to fight. Please, just 5 minutes. She opened the door, barely, looked at me through the crack like I was a stray dog. Her eyes were tired, older than I remembered. Guilt sat heavy on her face, but also pride, like she was still clinging to the idea that what she did was justified. I brought something, I said, holding up the folder. She glanced at it. What is that? Scripts. From Rachel. The one she wrote. Practiced. She planned the whole thing, Brielle. Every line you said in court. She fed it to you. Brielle stiffened. That's not true. She timed your pauses. She had you reference stories from 20 years ago that I'd forgotten. Stories only you two ever talked about. She just reminded me. She manipulated you. She used you. Silence. I handed her a page. One labeled Brielle, courtroom script, testimony notes. It even had her name circled at the top, with a post-it that read, needs more emotion. Suggests she tears up during the college fight part. She stared at it. Blinked. Her mouth opened, then closed. I didn't know, she whispered. She used you to take my daughter, I said quietly. And you helped her. Her face crumpled. But I didn't feel triumphant. Just tired. I need you to testify, I said. To say she coached you. That she lied. I can't. You can. She shook her head. Dad would never forgive me. I laughed bitterly. Dad already thinks I'm dangerous. What else can you lose? She didn't answer. I left the folder with her. Told her to call me if she wanted to fix things. She never called. But the next week, I got a letter from the court. Brielle had filed a statement. It wasn't a full confession, but it said she may have been influenced in her testimony, and that certain memories were reframed in discussions with Rachel. It wasn't much, but it was something. Then Rachel retaliated. Suddenly, I was getting anonymous reports filed against me. That I was drinking around children. That I'd threatened Rachel's family. All untrue, but enough to trigger investigations. CPS showed up at my place twice. Both times, I passed with flying colors. But the message was clear. Rachel was still pulling strings. She wasn't going to go down quietly. And she definitely wasn't going to let me win. But then something changed. Ellie started asking questions. She was 8 now. Smarter than ever. And the last time I saw her, during one of our supervised visits at the community center, she asked, "Why does Mommy cry when she says your name?" I knelt down. "I don't know, kiddo. She says you made her sad. That you're dangerous. But you don't seem dangerous." I smiled sadly. I'm not. But sometimes, people say things when they're hurt. She thought about that. Then she said, I heard her talking to Mason. Before he left, she said, I should have been an actress. What does that mean? And that's when I knew, really knew, that Rachel's armor was cracking. She'd fooled the adults. But not Ellie. Not forever. Because the truth always has a way of leaking out. Even if it takes years. And I was done playing defense. This wasn't about surviving anymore. It was about taking back my life. And I had a plan. But before I tell you what I did next, before I show you just how far Rachel went to keep her lies alive, you need to see what happened the night everything exploded. The night that pushed me past the point of no return. Because that night, Rachel made one final move. And it nearly destroyed me completely. Rock bottom isn't loud. It doesn't come crashing in like a storm or announce itself with fireworks. It creeps up in quiet ways, like the moment you stop checking your phone because no one calls anymore. Or when you hear your daughter laugh in someone else's home, and you're not the one who made her smile. That's where I was after Rachel's final move. It happened the night I thought things might finally start getting better. I had just gotten off the phone with a lawyer who believed me, really believed me. He'd read Brielle's partial retraction, reviewed the scripts Mason gave me, and said, this is strong. It's not a slam dunk yet, but it's something. Let's build on it. I hadn't felt that kind of hope in a long time. I remember sitting on my porch that night, watching the wind move through the trees, thinking maybe, just maybe, I was going to come out the other side of this. And then the knock came. Not the friendly kind. The kind that makes your stomach twist because it's too hard, too fast, too deliberate. 2 officers. Badge out. Warrant in hand. They said there'd been a report. That I was in violation of the restraining order, which, by the way, Rachel had quietly renewed the month before. She claimed I had harassed her sister at a grocery store, followed her home, and tried to intimidate her into testifying. I hadn't even seen her sister in months. But the officers didn't care. The warrant was signed. I was going to be detained until further clarification. They put me in cuffs. Right there on my porch. In front of neighbors. In front of people who already whispered when I walked by. Now they didn't need to whisper. They had confirmation. Nolan, the dangerous ex. The guy who lost custody. The guy who got arrested. I spent 2 nights in a holding cell before my lawyer got it sorted. The charges were dropped. No evidence. No credibility. The report was vague and contradictory. But it didn't matter. The damage was done. I was fired from my job 2 days later. Unrelated restructuring, they said. Yeah, right. I remember walking home from the bus stop after cleaning out my locker. It had snowed that morning, but it was already turning to slush. I didn't even have gloves. My fingers were raw and cracked, and the folder with Rachel's scripts was getting damp from the snowmelt. I should have put it in a plastic sleeve. I didn't think I'd need to protect it like a sacred relic. But now, it was all I had. Wet paper and a gut full of rage. That was the fall. Right there. No job. No custody. No reputation. And barely a thread of sanity left to hold on to. I remember walking into my apartment, a dingy one-bedroom on the edge of town with a heater that sounded like it was coughing up screws, and sitting on the floor, still wearing my boots. I didn't move for hours. Didn't even take off my coat. Just sat there staring at the wall until the sun went down. And I thought, maybe she won. Maybe Rachel actually did it. But then I saw a picture on the fridge. Ellie, drawing with sidewalk chalk in the summer. Her tongue sticking out the side of her mouth like it always did when she was concentrating. She was writing Daddy in big pink letters. And I snapped back. No, Rachel hadn't won. Because Ellie was still mine. No court order, no forged lie, no rehearsed breakdown could change that. She knew who I was. Deep down, beyond all the noise. I couldn't fix everything overnight. But I could start something. So I did. It began quietly. I sold my TV. Then my Xbox. Then the barely used tools in my garage. Piled the money into a cheap laptop, a prepaid hotspot, and the cheapest desk I could find. I started freelancing. Writing copy for websites. Taking photos for realtors. Fixing up WordPress pages for local businesses. At first, it was barely enough to buy groceries. But I didn't care. I just needed to rebuild something. Anything that Rachel hadn't touched. I also started recording everything. Every phone call. Every visit with Ellie. Every email. I built a digital fortress around my life. I knew Rachel would strike again, and the next time, I'd be ready. One of the best decisions I made was reaching out to an old college friend, Jonah. We hadn't spoken in years, but he ran a small digital marketing firm and always said, "If you ever want out of blue-collar work, come find me." So I found him, told him everything. Not all the drama, but enough. That I'd been railroaded. That I needed a shot. He gave me contract work. Nothing huge, but steady. And more than that, he gave me validation. "You're sharp, Nolan. You think like a strategist," he said one day. "You ever thought about consulting?" Consulting. That sounded like something real people with stable lives did. But I took the idea seriously. Started learning everything I could. SEO, branding, target funnels, even psychology, how people think, how they click, how they buy. Turns out, all that pain, it taught me a lot about manipulation, about framing narratives, about emotional influence. Funny, right? Rachel used those things to destroy me. Now I was using them to rebuild. Within 6 months, I was making enough to stop freelancing for scraps. I had clients of my own. A couple small business owners who liked the way I thought, liked the way I listened. Word got around. I built a tiny website, StoryBrand Consulting, helping you control the narrative. That name meant something to me, because for years, someone else had been controlling my narrative. Now I was taking it back. Even more incredible, I started helping other men going through the same thing. Quietly. An email here, a phone call there. I wasn't a lawyer or therapist, just a guy who'd been through the fire and knew how it burned. I joined forums, read stories, gave advice, document everything. I told them, even when it feels paranoid, especially then. And through it all, I kept seeing Ellie. Every Sunday at the supervised center. Then eventually, after I passed every review and had every false claim dismissed, the court allowed unsupervised visits again. Just every other weekend. But it was a start. The first time Ellie came to my place again, she looked around like she was stepping into a dream. "It smells like your old jacket," she said, hugging the couch cushion. I laughed. "Is that a good thing?" "Yeah. It smells like home." I swear, I almost cried. I started rebuilding our world. One weekend at a time. Pancake breakfasts. Forts made of blankets and chairs. Coloring books. Frozen pizzas. Laughter. I didn't talk bad about Rachel. I didn't need to. Ellie was smart. She started making her own observations. "Mommy says you're bad," she said one night while we were playing Uno. "But I think she's just mad that you're not sad anymore." I didn't say anything. Just shuffled the deck and smiled. Because she was right. I wasn't sad anymore. I was angry. I was focused. I was healing. Slowly, sure. But real healing. The kind that sticks. Rachel, meanwhile, was losing grip. Words started leaking out. Mason talked. Quietly at first, but then more openly. He told his HR department why he left the company. He told his friends. Eventually, one of those friends told someone who knew one of Rachel's coworkers. The whole thing began to ripple. Rachel started making posts about false narratives and people turning against her. She lost her job. I didn't celebrate, but I didn't feel bad either, because now, finally, the cracks were showing on her side. And then came the message that changed everything. It was a cold Tuesday morning. I was drinking coffee, going through emails, when I saw it. Subject: regarding Rachel's conduct, court submission enclosed. It was from a woman I'd never heard of, Deborah Lance, a former co-worker of Rachel's. She said she'd recently seen some of Rachel's social media posts, got curious, and stumbled across one of the threads I'd commented on, anonymously, in a family court forum. She recognized the story, recognized Rachel. She had screenshots, emails, recordings. Apparently, Rachel had bragged about what she was doing, had even mocked the court system. All you need is a few tears and a traumatized-sounding story, she said in one voice memo. They believe anything if you act like a victim. Deborah said she was willing to testify, that she'd held on to the evidence for a while but didn't know what to do with it. Now she did. I forwarded everything to my lawyer. He called me within 5 minutes. This might be it. But it wasn't just the evidence. It was the timing. Because I had just filed a motion to modify custody, requesting 50-50, backed by 2 years of perfect behavior, clean reviews, and strong visitation history. Rachel hadn't responded yet. Now, I had leverage. Real leverage. But before we could present any of it, before the court date arrived, Rachel made one last desperate move. And this time, she went after Ellie. That's where I'll pick it up next. Because what she did that week, it was beyond legal, beyond moral. It was the moment she crossed the final line. And it was the moment I stopped playing nice, forever. It's strange how clarity feels. You'd think it would come with excitement or relief, maybe even a jolt of adrenaline. But for me, it arrived with stillness, a cold, surgical calm I hadn't felt since before the divorce. It was like my brain had flipped a switch from survive to strategize. Because now, for the first time in 2 years, I had Rachel cornered. Real evidence, witnesses, and a reason the court couldn't ignore anymore. But that calm didn't last long. Because just as I was preparing to strike back, she pulled Ellie into the crossfire. It started with a voicemail. It was late, maybe 11:30 p.m., when my phone buzzed. I didn't recognize the number, but something made me answer. On the other end was a woman I vaguely knew. Julia. She was a teacher's assistant at Ellie's school, young, bright, always kind during pickup when I'd been allowed to do it. Her voice was shaking. Mr. Bennett, I'm sorry to call so late, but something happened today. With Ellie. My heart dropped. What happened? She told me not to tell anyone. Said her mom would get mad. But I don't think I can stay quiet. That sentence alone made my pulse race. Julia said Ellie had shown up to school unusually quiet that day. Not shy quiet, scared quiet. Wouldn't meet anyone's eyes. When Julia asked her what was wrong, Ellie hesitated and said something that chilled her to the bone. Mom said if I ever tell Daddy what she said, he'll disappear like magic. Disappear like magic. Those were the exact words. A threat, dressed in fairy tale. Julia kept talking, her voice trembling, saying that Ellie also mentioned a new doctor she'd been taken to. A special one who asked questions like, does Daddy ever scare you? And what kind of mean things does Daddy say when he's mad? Apparently, Rachel had taken Ellie to a therapist, but not a neutral one. A private counselor with no affiliation to the school. No court order. Just someone Rachel handpicked, probably coached, to feed a new narrative. She was laying the groundwork for another smear campaign. Again, only this time, she was going to weaponize Ellie herself. I barely heard the rest of Julia's call. My head was spinning. My hands were clenched so tightly my fingernails dug into my palms. Rachel wasn't just trying to paint me as unstable anymore. She was trying to plant false memories in my daughter. To break her, I thanked Julia, promised not to mention her name. Then I hung up and sat on the edge of the bed for what felt like an hour, staring at the floor, trying to process what this meant. She was escalating. And fast. Because she knew she was losing. Deborah's evidence had rattled her. I was sure of it. And now she was trying to discredit me again before I could act. But this time, she made a mistake. She got greedy. Reckless. And she underestimated how much I'd changed. Because the Nolan she ruined 2 years ago, he was gone. Now I wasn't just fighting for custody or reputation. I was fighting to protect my daughter's mind. So I started planning. Not a scream and shout kind of revenge. Not petty or cruel. No, that's Rachel's game. Mine would be clean, surgical, permanent. And it would start with building a team. The first call I made was to my lawyer, Scott. He was sharp, calm under pressure, and more importantly, he believed me. I sent him a detailed write-up of Julia's call and asked him to find out who the therapist was. Within a week, he had the name, Dr. Janice Rowell, licensed in the state. Private practice, but with a history of working with high-conflict custody cases and a reputation for favoring the parent who signs the checks. Rachel. Scott warned me not to approach Dr. Rowell directly. Not yet. Instead, we'd subpoena her records and request a court-appointed custody evaluator to counterbalance anything she submitted. But I had a better idea. Because see, what Rachel didn't know was that I had been recording everything for the past year. Every supervised visit, every phone call, every drop-off and pickup, every conversation with Ellie when it was legal to do so. All of it. And in those recordings were moments Rachel never thought would matter. Like Ellie saying, "Mommy says you're not allowed to smile too much around me or the judge will think you're lying." Or, "Mom said I shouldn't draw your house at school." Only hers. Subtle, right? But damning. Because it was clear manipulation. Clear coaching. And when you stack that next to Deborah's emails and the scripts Mason found, it paints a picture that even a blindfolded judge couldn't ignore. But I wasn't stopping there. I reached back out to Mason. We hadn't spoken since the warehouse. He was hesitant at first. Said he was trying to move on. Said he didn't want to get pulled back into Rachel's chaos. But when I told him about Ellie, about what Rachel was trying to do now, he agreed to help. "I'll give a full statement," he said. "She deserves to be exposed. Just promise me you'll protect your daughter. That poor kid, she didn't ask for any of this." I promised. Then I called Brielle. That was the hardest one. We hadn't spoken since her lukewarm affidavit. But now, I needed her to go further. I asked her to meet me at a coffee shop, public, neutral ground. She showed up late, eyes cautious, face pale. I didn't waste time. "Rachel's trying to rewrite Ellie's memories now," I said, sliding the subpoena for Dr. Rowell across the table. "You still want to believe you did the right thing? Or are you ready to clean up the mess you helped make?" Brielle didn't speak, just stared at the paper. Her fingers trembled. "I need you to testify, not just in writing. I need you on the stand. I need you to tell the court Rachel manipulated you, that she coached you, just like she's doing to Ellie." She looked up, eyes glassy. "Why are you asking me? After everything?" "Because you're part of the reason this happened. And because Ellie still loves you. If you have any decency left, do it for her." A long silence. Then she nodded. "I'll do it." Now I had the pieces. But I needed one final push, the moment that would tie everything together in front of the court. So I scheduled a deposition. Not just with Scott, or Mason, or Brielle, but with Julia, the TA who called me that night. She was scared, said she might lose her job, but I promised anonymity, legal protection, and above all, that I'd never let Rachel near her again. She agreed. We recorded her statement under oath. And what she said in that deposition, it was the match to the gasoline. She told me not to tell anyone, that if I did, Mommy would be mad and Daddy would disappear like magic. She was terrified. And no child should be afraid of telling the truth. Scott filed everything. The recordings, the deposition, the emails from Deborah, the voice notes, Mason's full written affidavit, Brielle's revised testimony, Julia's sworn statement, and a formal motion. Request for emergency custody reevaluation due to suspected psychological abuse. It was long, it was detailed, and it was airtight. I didn't sleep much the night before the hearing. Just sat on my couch, surrounded by files, watching the clock. Not out of fear, out of focus. Because this wasn't just about winning anymore. This was about ending it. For good. But before the court could act, Rachel made one final move. Her last Hail Mary. She showed up at my apartment. Unannounced. Ellie was not with her. It was 9 p.m. I opened the door, and there she was. Hair wild, eyes glassy, mascara smudged. She looked nothing like the woman who once stood in court claiming I was a danger to our child. She looked like someone unraveling. "You can't do this," she hissed, voice cracking. "You don't know what you're starting." "I know exactly what I'm starting," I said. "You're going to ruin my life. You already ruined mine." She stepped closer. "I'll tell them you faked the scripts. That Mason's lying. That you manipulated your sister and threatened that school employee. I stepped out, shut the door behind me, and looked her dead in the eye. I'm not afraid of you anymore. For the first time in years, she flinched. Because deep down, she was. I wasn't her puppet. I wasn't her victim. And I wasn't backing down. Not this time. The next morning, we walked into court. I had a folder in my hand. Not just evidence, but the truth. What came next would be a war. But I had allies. I had facts. I had purpose. And for the first time in years, I had power. Because revenge, when it's done right, doesn't look like revenge. It looks like justice. But you'll see. Next, the final hearing. And the fallout that changed everything. The courtroom was smaller than I remembered. Warmer, too. Like a place where nothing bad could happen. The kind of lie only cold furniture and beige walls could tell. But I knew better. This was where I had been dismantled 2 years ago. Where my name, my fatherhood, my dignity, all of it, had been methodically shredded and scattered to the floor like torn paper. I had walked in then as a man clinging to the last threads of sanity. But not today. Today, I walked in with calm. Not fake calm, either, the kind you wear like a mask. No, this was the quiet confidence of a man holding truth like a loaded weapon. Rachel was already there when I entered, sitting across the aisle with her lawyer. She didn't look at me. She didn't have to. Her whole body screamed tension, jaw clenched, shoulders stiff, fingers death gripping the strap of her purse. Her lawyer leaned in and whispered something, but she didn't respond. Scott and I sat down and opened our folders in perfect sync. Inside was everything. Years of pain, loss, and carefully gathered receipts distilled into a timeline of undeniable facts. The judge entered. Not the same one from the original case. This was someone new. Someone who hadn't already been fed Rachel's theatrics. I took that as a good sign. Court began. Scott spoke first, laying out our motion for emergency reevaluation of custody based on new evidence of psychological abuse, falsified testimony, and manipulation of both the court and a minor child. Rachel's lawyer objected immediately, said the timing was suspicious, said this was a vindictive attempt to relitigate settled matters. Scott smiled. Your Honor, if someone had planted a lie in the courtroom that stripped a father of his child and stained his name, would there ever be a bad time to correct it? He started slowly, intentionally. First, he introduced Mason's affidavit. Pages upon pages, signed and time-stamped. A full confession of Rachel's manipulation, the scripts he found, the details she rehearsed, all of it. The judge raised an eyebrow at that. Then came the emails. From Deborah Lance, including one that read. She bragged about how she practiced crying in front of the mirror. Said it was easier than she thought to get people to believe her. I couldn't watch it happen again. After that, Scott played the voice note. Rachel's own voice. All you need is a few tears and a traumatized-sounding story. They believe anything if you act like a victim. The courtroom went still. Rachel's lawyer objected. That could be fabricated. Scott countered instantly. Verified metadata. Direct from the source. We've included a forensic analysis of the audio. It's her. The judge nodded slowly. Then came Brielle. She took the stand reluctantly, but when she started talking, her voice found strength. She admitted Rachel had rehearsed certain stories with her, that she was told how to phrase things, which events to emphasize, and which details to conveniently remember. I thought I was protecting Ellie, she said, but I realized now I was being manipulated, too. Next came Julia. She wasn't supposed to testify, technically a surprise witness, but the judge allowed it after a brief recess. She spoke with a quiet urgency, describing Ellie's fear, Rachel's pressure, and the moment she realized something was very wrong. She said if she told her dad anything, he'd disappear like magic. Julia said, voice cracking. That's not imagination. That's fear. And it didn't come from her. It came from her mother. The judge scribbled notes for nearly a full minute after that. Then Scott played the recordings. Ellie's voice, small but clear. Mommy says if you smile too much, the judge will think you're pretending. Mom said not to draw your house at school. She said I shouldn't love both of you. Rachel didn't flinch. Not once. But I saw her face change, just slightly. Her lips tightened. Her eyes lost focus. Not from shame, though. From calculation. You could see the wheels turning, trying to form a new story. But it was too late. Because finally, Scott closed with Dr. Janice Rowell's session summaries, obtained through subpoena. And as predicted, they were comically one-sided. filled with leading language. Questions designed to frame, not understand. Then, a single line that sealed it. Patient's mother requested I not ask about any positive experiences with father, as this would confuse the therapeutic narrative. The courtroom held its breath. The judge leaned back. This is one of the most disturbing patterns of manipulation I've seen presented in this court, she said slowly. Not only has this woman weaponized the legal system, but she appears to have knowingly damaged the emotional well-being of her child to do so. Rachel's lawyer stood up. Your Honor, we request time to review. Denied. And then, in one sweeping judgment, the tide turned. Custody was immediately transferred to joint, with a strong leaning toward primary custody for me. Rachel would have supervised visitation pending a full psychological evaluation. A forensic review of the original custody case would be initiated, and a formal inquiry opened into perjury and potential child endangerment. That wasn't just a win. That was a rebuke. A warning shot to every manipulative parent who thinks they can twist the system with crocodile tears and choreographed breakdowns. But the fallout wasn't done. 2 weeks later, Rachel lost her job. Deborah had anonymously leaked her voice memo to the company's ethics department. Combined with whispers of legal trouble, they decided it wasn't worth the PR risk. Then came the subpoena. Rachel was formally charged with obstruction of justice and providing false testimony under oath. I didn't even have to press charges. The DA's office picked it up on their own. Apparently, there'd been other complaints in the past, nothing confirmed, but now, with hard evidence, the dominoes fell. Brielle distanced herself publicly, posted a statement online about being misled and working on repairing damaged relationships. I didn't comment. I didn't need to, because Ellie was home, not just in my apartment, but in her real home, where no one made her afraid to laugh, or love, or just be a kid. We started new traditions. Thursday movie nights. Saturday pancakes with whipped cream towers. Sunday hikes with matching flasks of hot cocoa. She drew my house again in school, this time with her standing in front and me beside her, both of us smiling under a crooked little sun. Her teacher framed it. Months passed. The court-appointed therapist said Ellie was thriving, adjusting faster than expected. She's resilient, the therapist told me. And you? You're grounded. Patient. She feels safe with you. And that was worth more than any courtroom victory. Rachel eventually pled guilty to a lesser charge. Probation. Court-mandated therapy. A stern warning from the judge. If I ever see you use this court again to settle personal vendettas, I will ensure you are stripped of every privilege you've ever abused. I didn't smile when I heard that, but inside, something settled. The final piece clicked into place. One day, while cleaning out a drawer, I found that manila folder, the one Mason handed me at the warehouse. The scripts. The beginning of it all. I thought about burning it, but I didn't. I wrapped it in plastic and locked it in my safe. Not out of fear, but as a reminder. That truth, when gathered carefully and wielded with patience, doesn't just clear your name. It breaks the lies meant to destroy you. And the people who build those lies, they always forget one thing. A man who's been falsely ruined doesn't need revenge. He is the revenge.